Welcome, seekers of justice. This is Reddit Revenge, and today's story awaits. I need you to brace for this one. 10 years of my life condensed into a single, ugly truth. I lost the woman I'd known since we were kids, and with her went our unborn son. The company that broke her life tried to buy silence with a cheap payout. I spent years fighting them, courtrooms, politicians, jail sentences for the guilty, and I won more than money. I won a promise to myself that nothing would ever take from me again without consequence. Fast forward. I rebuilt a life that could breathe again. A job, a small house in my hometown, my mother living with me so I wouldn't collapse. I met Catherine at a party. Funny, warm, the sort of person who made the idea of second chances feel possible. We laughed, we dated, she moved in, and for a while I let myself believe I could be happy again. Then the little things started. Short Skype calls that ended abruptly. A car that showed up in the alley when I was away. An item in my wardrobe that wasn't mine. I told myself I was being paranoid. Men tell themselves that a lot before the truth breaks them. The night I finally pulled into that back lane and watched, through the kitchen window, my friend and my partner betray me. Time stopped. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. I walked away and cried until anger replaced grief. What came after wasn't a bar fight or a shattered plate. It was a plan. Cold, patient, and irrevocable. Stick with me. This is the story of how I made one choice. Not to be the one thrown under the bus again. When I tell you I froze, I mean it in the truest sense. My hand was still gripping the car keys, knuckles white, but my body felt like stone. Through that window, the fluorescent light above the kitchen made everything sickeningly clear. There was no mistaking shadows, no chance it was innocent. Catherine, my Catherine. Half naked on the counter where I'd cooked her favorite meals. Harry, my supposed brother-in-arms, moving with the ease of a man who'd been there more than once. The air in my lungs turned sharp, like glass. The sound of them, their laughter, their gasps, hit harder than any fist. For a fleeting second, I wanted to storm inside, to throw them both into the street and let the whole neighborhood see their shame. But then another voice whispered in my head. No, not like this. Not messy, not loud. Smarter, colder. I stepped back into the shadows of the alley, heart pounding, mind racing. Questions clawed at me. How long had this been going on? How stupid had I been? But underneath it all was something cleaner. Resolve. They'd taken my trust, my second chance at love, and spat on it. If Rachel's death had taught me anything, it was this. When the world takes something from you, you don't beg for justice, you engineer it. I waited, sat in my car for what felt like hours, tears drying into salt on my face. When I finally moved, it wasn't toward the house. I drove away, headlights dimmed, already piecing together how to dismantle two lives without lifting a single fist. That was the moment I stopped being the victim of someone else's choices and started becoming the architect of their downfall. The drive that night was a blur, streetlights smearing into streaks, the hum of the engine almost lulling me into some kind of numb trance. But inside, my brain was a storm. The betrayal burned, yes, but beneath that was clarity. I knew if I confronted them outright, they'd twist it. Catherine would cry, Harry would lie, and somehow I'd be painted as the jealous, insecure man. No, if they wanted to play dirty, I'd play cleaner, sharper, quieter. I thought about Rachel, about how cruelly life had ripped her from me. That rage I'd buried for years rose up again, familiar and dangerous. Back then, I couldn't punish the executives who cut corners without a system of laws and courts. But Harry and Catherine? They weren't protected by corporations or lawyers. They were vulnerable, arrogant, careless. And I knew them better than they knew themselves. The first step was patience. Let them think they'd gotten away with it. Let them believe I was still the oblivious partner and loyal friend. People like them always slip deeper into their habits when they think no one is watching. And I was going to watch closer than ever. By the time I parked back in front of my house, I had decided. I wouldn't raise my voice, wouldn't break a dish, wouldn't even let on that I suspected a thing. I'd smile, kiss Catherine, share a drink with Harry at the next barbecue, all while quietly laying the traps that would collapse their entire world around them. That night, lying awake in the same bed where they had desecrated everything I held dear. I made myself a promise. I wouldn't simply catch them. I would erase them. And the beauty of it all? They'd never see it coming. The following weeks were a test of endurance. Every time Catherine laughed at some text on her phone, every time Harry greeted me with his fake grin, I had to bite back the urge to expose them right then and there. But vengeance, I reminded myself, wasn't about speed, it was about precision. So I started gathering information. Catherine, careless as she was, left her laptop unlocked more times than I could count. I never rifled through her things before, but now I cataloged every chat, every late-night Skype log, every digital breadcrumb that proved her disloyalty. Screenshots, timestamps, cross-references. My private folder grew fat with evidence. Harry, though, required a subtler touch. He had a reputation in town as the golden boy manager. But I knew things others didn't, like his taste for powder. He hid it well, but years ago, I'd stumbled across a stash at his place during a party. He covered it with a laugh, and I pretended not to notice. But I had noticed, and now it was going to be his undoing. I reached out to a few of my less reputable business contacts, the kind who knew how to get things you didn't want receipts for. A small assortment of weed, a few grams of coke. Nothing major, but enough to turn Harry from respected professional into drug-addled criminal in the eyes of the law. Meanwhile, Catherine thought she was winning. She complained sometimes that my trips were long, that she missed me. She played the part of the doting partner so well that even my parents continued to adore her. I nodded along, kissed her cheek, and told her I loved her. Inside, though, I was already planning how to watch her world burn. By day, I was her partner. By night, I was her executioner sketching the blueprints of a downfall so thorough, neither she nor Harry would ever recover. Patience became my greatest weapon. I couldn't just lash out. I had to make sure every move looked natural, every piece of the puzzle falling into place on its own. That way, when the hammer dropped, no one would ever suspect I had been the one holding it all along. The first step was to get Harry comfortable. I invited him over more often, hosted barbecues, offered beers like the old days. To him, it must have felt like our friendship was as solid as ever, maybe even stronger. He never suspected the venom hidden behind my smile. On one particularly rowdy night, after plenty of liquor had flowed, I suggested he crash at my place instead of stumbling home. He laughed, agreed, and passed out in the guest room. That was when I made my move. I crept outside to his car, careful not to wake the neighbors, and planted the stash I'd collected. A little under the seat, a little in the glove compartment, but the crown jewel? A generous bundle tucked neatly into his tire well. Enough to get him arrested, enough to ruin him. But I didn't stop there. A few of my personal belongings, things I'd reported missing after my staged break-in, found their way into his trunk. The narrative was writing itself. Harry wasn't just a drug user, he was a thief too. The next morning, he groggily thanked me for letting him crash, and I even drove him home. What he didn't realize was that his own house became the second stage of my plan. While he stumbled inside, I slipped in behind him and left just enough contraband tucked in discreet corners to ensure that if the police searched his place, they'd find a story they couldn't ignore. To everyone else, I was just the loyal friend. To him, I was still the trusted confidant. But to myself, I was becoming something far more dangerous, the quiet architect of his downfall. The beauty of revenge is in the waiting game. Quick retaliation feels good in the moment, but it doesn't leave scars. What I wanted was to etch Harry's name in permanent ink onto the pages of his own disgrace. So I let weeks pass, watching him strut around, still puffed up with that fake confidence he always carried. He bragged about his connections, about how everyone trusted him, about how he could talk his way out of any trouble. I'd nod along, hiding my grin behind a sip of beer. He had no idea that the very trust he bragged about was the rope tightening around his neck. One night, while we sat at a crowded bar, he leaned over and whispered that he had a big deal coming up. Nothing major, just something that would put quick cash in his pocket. My ears perked up, not because I cared about his shady ventures, but because it was the perfect backdrop for what I had planned. If the cops connected him to drugs while he was already running schemes, the puzzle would look complete. No one would believe his innocence, because there wasn't any to believe in. Behind the scenes, I made sure the right whispers reached the right ears. A casual conversation at the gym with a guy who had a brother in narcotics. A carefully crafted anonymous tip, sent through a burner phone that I'd smash and ditch afterward. Nothing too obvious, nothing that would trace back to me. Just smoke curling upward, drawing attention toward the fire I'd built under Harry's feet. The paranoia began slowly. He mentioned that he thought someone was following him, that maybe his car had been moved slightly on the street. He laughed it off in front of me, but I could see the cracks forming. His bravado was slipping, replaced by the nervous tics of a man who knew, deep down, that his world wasn't as safe as he pretended. And that's when I knew the stage was set. The audience, the police, his neighbors, even his so-called friends were ready. All they needed was a show, and I was ready to pull back the curtain. The real art of revenge isn't just striking. It's striking at the exact moment when your target feels untouchable. That's when the fall hurts the most. So I waited until Harry's big deal was just about to close. He'd been bragging more than usual, flashing his fake confidence like a badge of honor. Everyone around him believed he was the guy who always landed on his feet, the man who never stumbled. I wanted to make sure that when he fell, there would be no soft landing, just the cold, hard ground. I had already planted the seeds of suspicion, but now I needed something tangible, something undeniable. So I found a way into his world. Harry was sloppy with his habits. He used the same bar, the same parking lot, the same routines. One night, while he was inside sweet-talking some poor woman, I slipped into his car. The lock popped open easier than I expected. He hadn't even bothered to fix the old latch. Inside, I left what I knew the cops would consider gold. A small baggie of powder tucked just far enough under the seat that it wouldn't be noticed by him, but obvious enough during a search. Not too much. Just enough to ruin a career, to raise serious questions, to turn whispers into shouts. Then came the phone call. An anonymous tip, timed perfectly to coincide with his shady deal. I made sure to emphasize the location, the car, the man. I didn't need to invent the crime. Harry had already done that by living his life like a walking red flag. I just gave the authorities a little push in the right direction. The night of the bust, I wasn't there physically, but I didn't have to be. A buddy texted me after seeing the flashing lights and police swarming the parking lot. Harry, dragged out of his car, yelling, cursing, trying to charm his way free. But charm doesn't work when a Ziploc bag full of evidence is pulled from under your seat. When I got the message, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. The net had closed, the trap had sprung. The man who tried to destroy me was now being eaten alive by the system he thought he was too clever to fear. And the best part? This was only the beginning. Harry's arrest didn't instantly destroy him, but it was like pulling the first card out of a fragile house of cards. His big deal, gone in a heartbeat. Investors who once smiled at him over champagne suddenly stopped taking his calls. Partners who swore they believed in him distanced themselves overnight, pretending they had barely known the man. Reputation is currency in his world, and Harry's balance was wiped clean in a matter of days. I watched quietly from the sidelines, never too close, but always aware. Newspapers didn't run his name, but whispers in the industry carried faster than any headline. Harry's finished. Did you hear? Drugs. What a shame. Some people pitied him, but most enjoyed the spectacle. It's always easier to watch a man fall when you've secretly hated his arrogance for years. The beautiful part was that Harry didn't even suspect me. He thought the world was just finally out to get him. In his eyes, he was the victim of bad luck, of jealous rivals, of some cosmic unfairness. But I knew the truth. His downfall wasn't fate, it was engineering. Precision. Revenge sharpened like a blade. Yet I didn't feel pure satisfaction. Not yet. There was something unfinished, something missing. Watching him lose money and face wasn't enough. Harry had taken more than just opportunities from me. He tried to strip me of my dignity, my career, my future. I wanted him to feel that same suffocating hopelessness. The kind where you wake up and realize the world isn't just against you. It's forgotten you. So I waited. I let him burn through his savings, his friends, his favors. I let him drown in the shallow pool of his excuses. And only when he was gasping for air, clinging to the illusion that maybe, just maybe, he could make a comeback. That's when I prepared my final move. Because the end of a story isn't just about defeat. It's about making sure the defeated understand why they lost. And Harry? He was about to learn that lesson the hard way. By now Harry was a ghost of the man he once pretended to be. His tailored suits still hung on him, but they looked less like armor and more like a costume he no longer fit into. He lingered at events, desperate to remind people he still mattered, though most avoided him like he carried a contagious disease. I could almost taste his panic in the air whenever I saw him shuffle around with a drink, trying too hard to look relaxed. But the real dagger was still waiting. You see, while Harry was distracted putting out the fires of his collapsing reputation, I'd been busy planting something far worse. A trail of truth. The deals he faked, the contracts he forged, the names he'd borrowed to make himself sound legitimate. All neatly documented, copied, and delivered anonymously to the right set of eyes. Regulators, journalists, former associates who suddenly had every reason to talk. The beauty of it? None of it was fabricated. I didn't need to lie. Harry had created the rope. I only tied the knot. The moment the first article hit, it was over. Local businessman accused of fraud. His name in black print, tied forever to words he could never scrub away. Lawsuits followed like vultures circling a carcass. He tried to fight, of course. Harry always thought he was the smartest in the room. But the more he struggled, the deeper he sank. And as I watched him lose everything, I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. Revenge isn't about anger, it's about balance. About restoring the scales when someone thinks they can tip them forever in their favor. Harry thought he could step on people like me and walk away untouchable. Now, he was proof that no one is untouchable. He'd thrown me under the bus once. This time, I made sure the bus never stopped rolling. And that's how the story ended. Not with a dramatic showdown in an office or a courtroom, but with silence. The kind of silence that follows when someone has finally been exposed for who they truly are. Harry had spent years building a castle out of lies, and all it took was the truth to bring it crashing down. Sometimes revenge doesn't come with fists or shouting. Sometimes it comes with patience, precision, and letting the guilty destroy themselves. In the end, Harry wasn't just ruined by me. He was ruined by the very arrogance that made him think he could never fall. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Would you have gone as far as I did? Or would you have walked away and let karma take its course? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them. And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and smash the notification bell so you never miss the next upload. Share this video with your friends, because who doesn't love a good revenge story? Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay sharp. That's the end of this story. Now I want to know, what would you have done in this situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching.